Journalist turned marketer, focused on getting people to engage with your ideas, not your products. You can never go wrong if you are telling a story about how somebody solved a problem that the person you're trying to reach can relate to, or data that can help someone make a better decision. If there was going to be two shortcuts for how you engage people, I think those are the two. Someone spent meaningful amount of time with a story is the thing that's most likely to get them to come back. If people spend more than a minute and scroll halfway through an article, they're like 3 times as likely to sign up for our email newsletter than someone who hasn't. People who have hit that benchmark and then seen another article in the same session are like 12 times more likely, right, to sign up for our email newsletter than people who haven't. So we come in and work with our clients to try to say, okay, if you had a store next door, it's a metaphor, but if you had a store next door that was just your ideas, what would be on the shelves? What are the ideas that are on the shelves? What are the experience that you're creating? And it's not enough to make someone a customer of your idea store. You want to make them a repeat customer. You got to get them to come back, to get loyalty to those ideas. That was intended to be the first bit of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Hello, fellows. Welcome to the next episode of Jagged with Just Ravi. Subscribe to my channel for conversations at the edge with thought leaders from the marketing, branding, and the business world. Conversations that ignite new ideas with rough, sharp edges. Hi, Ben. So nice to have you on my show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Ben, if I requested you to tweet your profile, what would you say?
Journalist turned marketer, focused on getting people to engage with your ideas, not your products.
Yeah, that's very powerful what you said. Engage with ideas and not products, because that's the real power.
I'll just take the ball and run with it. And as I have had this post-journalism second half of my career, the guiding insight for me has been, that to be anti-advertising. And what I mean by that is, we're still working for organizations, we're still working for companies, and we're still trying to promote what they do, and we're still trying to get people to buy their products. But if we think about customers not as customers, but as people, which I realize is sometimes a revolutionary thing, most of the people, most of the time, they don't want to buy something. They most of the time, we're not thinking about a product and trying to solve a problem by, buying it. We're thinking about our lives. We're thinking about, we want to be entertained. We want to be informed. We want to, learn or read or watch something that's going to make us smile or a little bit better at something that we care about. And products sometimes help with that, but they're never the answer in and of themselves. People tend to think about things in a much broader context than products. And if all you're doing as an organization is talking about your product, you're potentially missing 80, 90% of the opportunities to have a meaningful interaction with someone, about an idea, a topic, a conversation that they care about, that you care about. There's going to be a time where they start thinking about, like, how can a product help me, do whatever it is that I'm trying to do. But most of their time, they're trying to think about, how can I do this thing that I want to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Not consumers, but people. And this can actually be more profitable for companies but with a long-term view, perhaps. Ben, this whole performance matrix has actually, with so much data coming into the picture, has actually made clients and marketers very myopic, because, they're looking at every day, what are the sales, what is the ROI? And despite the appreciation that, yes, if I have to have a more meaningful relationship with my consumer, so a lot of research is happening. Yeah, I want to understand my consumer in his entirety of life, but yet the emphasis stays on, e-commerce and products getting sold. So I love what you said, because yeah, I mean, I noted that you're anti-advertising.
And to be clear, I'm not anti-advertising, but I'm anti-advertising as much as we do it.
Yeah, like this whole buy my product. I don't care what you need. This is my product, so you buy it. So me-centered approach is
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. So data and design, and now journalism is at the heart of it. So what are the important lessons that marketers can learn from journalists? And along with that, you've studied 1 million people engage with online content. So
Mhm.
what are the learnings there? I have A and B, two questions.
Yeah. So I'll take them in order, because I think the answer helps, to the first informs the second. So, just for background, I was a reporter, a journalist for at least the first chunk of my career, the first half, more than half, I guess. And, I ended up at the Wall Street Journal, and I was covering, mostly the tech industry, but other things as well. And I had this experience of, editors asking me all the time, why does anybody care? I would have a great idea for a story. I thought it was a great idea. And my editor would say, well, what's new? What's happening now? Why do we make a reader care? As it turns out, the only currency that matters is, does somebody think what you wrote is interesting? And how are you going to make it interesting to someone? And there's a lot of learned tradecraft that happens in journalism that helps you take an idea, take a topic, take something that you've observed, and figure out, how do you tell that story in a way that's going to engage people and make them, continue to scroll or pick up a newspaper and go to page 4 to read the continuation of the story. Now, what I have experienced in the world of marketing, and frankly, I experienced this as a reporter when people would pitch me and try to get me to talk about, what they were doing, is that most marketing doesn't really apply that filter of, how do we make people care? Most of it is, or coming from the orientation of, what do we want to say? What is the message? What is our branding? And that's important because, I believe that that's the anchor to which all of this stuff can be applied. But it isn't enough if you want to get people to care, or at least if you want to expand the number of people who care, or if you want to reach people in moments that are beyond the product, the shopping moment. If you want to do that, you need to understand, you have to run what you were trying to say through that filter of, what do people care about? And what do people care about is it's going to vary by audience. But, fundamentally, I think what we find is that, you can never go wrong if you are telling a story about how somebody solved a problem that the person you're trying to reach can relate to. How someone like me solved a problem I can relate to, sort of the short version, or data that can help someone make a better decision. If there was going to be 2 shortcuts for how you engage people, I think those are the two things that we would recommend doing. But again, that's a very reductive, narrow way of saying, how do you make stuff that people care about? Now, what's interesting, and this sort of gets to that second part, is, what you're trying to do when you shift that is, you're not trying to sell anymore. You're not trying to say, this is intended to sell you. What you're trying to do is, you're trying to say, does somebody get value out of the content that I put into the world? The thing that I made, did it make you smile? Did it make you feel smarter? Did it make you, did it help you in some way? Whether that's by bringing a little bit moment of whimsy, or changing the way you think about a complex problem. that isn't the same as clicking buy now. And in fact, the vast majority, I mean, it depends on the products. There's lots and lots of products out there that no one in their right mind is going to read a cool article and then click buy now. We have clients that sell, software, and it costs $1 million. Like, who in their right mind is going to read it? It could be the most amazing article or video anyone's ever made, right? But who on earth is going to read it and be like, ooh, where's the link to buy $1 million worth of software? Can I click now? Boom. I like to travel, like to go on vacation. And, but my family goes on vacation like a couple times a year. Right. And if you're trying to sell me a hotel or an airline ticket or some sort of vacation thing, if it's not one of the very small number of moments where I'm ready to go on vacation, I'm not going to book now. I'm not going to click book now. Right. But the number of moments where I care about, or I'm interested in seeing about amazing places that I could aspirationally dream about going to, vastly exceeds the number of moments where I'm going to book now. And so if all you're doing, if you're doing, cool, amazing places, then you need to have a sort of, you immediately begin to say, okay, well, how do we assess the value of what we're trying to do? And again, to take a step back for a minute, just to reset, what we are encouraging people to do is to create content that is not designed to sell, that is designed to engage. We're trying to engage you around ideas, not products. And, and we're trying to inspire you, to inform you, and so forth, to do something that is sort of related to the brand, but not of the product. So if we're not going to ask you to buy now, and if we're not going to ask you to become a customer, how do we find out whether what we did has value? Right. Because and especially in this world that we inhabit now, with marketing becoming more and more digital, you have a team over here that's like the growth team, and they're going to come in and they're going to say, we had a campaign where we were putting 10% off coupons in Facebook, and we spent $2 million on that campaign, and we attribute $4 million worth of sales to that campaign. And somebody's going to say, that's amazing work. Great job, everybody. And if you just have this content team that's like, we made this really, really cool video. Yeah, you can't go into that same meeting and present your work that way. And even if you go in and you're like, we made this really, really cool video and 100,000 people saw it, it still isn't, what is the value of that 100,000 people, so you have to be like, oh yeah, but we didn't want anybody to buy anything, so we didn't ask them to, we didn't measure that. So what we have tried to do is to try to say, okay, well, let us do two things. First of all, let's come up with a system that uses data to help assess the value of this content that isn't intended to sell. How do you, so let's first and foremost create a scorecard. That's not just how many people saw it, but is based on the behavior that we see from these people. And then, once we do that, let's do everything we can to connect it to some kind of outcome. And the only outcome that really matters is like a sale, let's say, right? Now we do so with an understanding that, the goal is not to get you to step one, read the article, and step two, buy. In fact, that's not a behavior that we see. We see sort of something else that I can talk about in a minute. But how do we sort of look and say and ask questions like, of people who've engaged with our content or engaged with our content multiple times, what behaviors are more likely? Are they more likely to buy than someone who hasn't engaged with our content? Or are people who have engaged multiple times more likely to buy than people who haven't? And once we do that, it becomes pretty interesting. And it's not, and you're playing in the same universe now as those, people who spent $2 million on Facebook promotions, because you are using data to demonstrate the value of what you've made. But frankly, more importantly, you've created a mechanism to understand the impact of what you're making and to learn what's effective and what's not effective, and to improve upon it. and to go back to the thing that you mentioned here about studying a million people's behavior is probably 10, 20 times that now. And and we see a handful of things I think are pretty interesting. So whether or not you read an article has very little to do with the article. And that's sort of a weird thing to say, but what we're doing is we're creating an online experience, and the experience happens to be an article, let's say. But and this is funny because we have clients where we'll be working in a Word doc with them, and and it's like maybe we're writing an article for their CEO, and it will go like this: we'll talk with their PR people and the VP of marketing and the chief of staff, to do background research. Then we'll interview the CEO. Maybe we'll spend an hour on the phone with the CEO of like a Fortune 500 company. We'll go off and we'll write something. We'll share it with the PR person. They'll give us feedback. We'll revise it. They'll share it with the chief of staff. We'll get feedback. We'll revise it. It goes to the CEO. The CEO spends 3 hours one night reviewing it, leaving feedback. We address that. The general counsel wants to look at it because, hey, the CEO is going to have this out there. Let's give it a legal review, right? And if you had a meter running about how much time was spent on this article, it's preposterous, how much people's time, when you take into account, the CEO and the lawyers and all of that, right? And it's all in a document. It's just a doc, and then you go and you put it online, and there's no thought about, where is it? How is it promoted? What is the layout of this article? And in fact, what we see when we study in increments is that, in general, half of people are going to leave a site before they've read a word. They're going to base their decision on load time. How fast did this page load? Mm-hmm. They're going to base the decision on does the blog, let's say, or whatever it is, does the place where I am, does it look inviting? Am I in a place I expected to be? Or is it does it look like it's some, relic from the 1990s? Is the headline compelling? Is there an image that entices me to read more? And only after a very cursory, and these aren't conscientious thoughts, right? These are just sort of the sort of subtle things that people go through when they're looking, but we see it in data. What we'll see is that that about on average, if you sort of look across all of our clients and all people, about half of people are going to leave a website in the first 15 seconds before they hit the 15-second mark. Mm-hmm. And if you sit there with a stopwatch and time yourself loading a content page and trying to read an article, I encourage anyone who's listening to do this as an experiment. You can't read more than the first sentence of an article by the time you hit the 15-second mark. And yet half of people are deciding whether to read this CEO article or not based on, based on other things, So, I think for us, that sort of equates back to, okay, well, what are the things that now that we've connected the dots and we have data and we have visibility into what's engaging, where we can take action, and we can diagnose the problems, the things that are stopping people from engaging. And we can then begin to sort of figure out what are the actions that we can take to make this more engaging. And that's the first step towards closing that loop to getting someone to buy something. But again, we sort of broken it down into 100 different discrete steps.
There's a lot to it.
A lot there. I know. I just ranted for quite a while.
Not at all. Not at all. So, Ben, so it's an experience. The content that you've put out there is an experience, whether it's an article or a video content. The ultimate, yes, the desire is to sell, but you have to make your audience care. So you have to understand them and stay in their radar. And also, you talked about moment marketing. Which moment can you capture when they are sensitized for looking, it's relevant information and they're about to make a purchase? Like you took an example of a vacation. So yeah. Could you take us through a case study or an example where if you could, talk about the misconceptions and hence how conventionally the content would have been dealt with, and how you and your team's approach changes that
Yeah. So I'll give you, I'll give a couple of examples. But so as an example, just to sort of substantiate the point that I was making before about the leap. We have seen and we've evaluated for clients websites where, let's say it's a bank. This is a real example. I'm just not going to name the bank. Where we will have a piece of content, and the most common way that someone finds it is through email if they're an existing customer, right? They're on an email newsletter. Search, very popular. People are searching in problems that they have and they're directed to something, or social because the article's promoted. And 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 what we see is that we're able to, because we know the audience, um, create a piece of content that people spend like a great deal of time with. Um, but in this one case, we had a client that was having open an account as the CTA, and shockingly, nobody was clicking, or there'd be a handful of clicks, but almost all of them presented like somebody clicking something because it was a bright color and they didn't mean to do it. No one opened an account. And if you think about it for a minute, that makes a lot of sense, because opening a bank account is kind of like a big deal, right? You either, if you don't have one, you want to do a little bit of research. If you already have one somewhere else, changing the bank is kind of like a big deal. And most people aren't going to be looking for how do I do blankety blankety blank, reading an article that's trying to solve that problem, and then also be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to switch my bank account. It's just not that's not the way humans think. Um, on the other hand, what we did see was, as we were reading, as people read these articles, we would include links, because that's what you do, to other content, and in some cases, we'd be sending outside reports, that were published by other people, and we saw that some of those were ones that people spent, were clicked on a lot. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, you know what? Here's an opportunity for you to have your own point of view on this topic in a deeper format than this article, because we have seen, based on the behavior of people clicking off property, that they want this, and they want the opportunity to hear what you have to say. They care about the idea that you're curating. Why don't we instead make our own? That's one example. Another one is a big software company where we've worked with, um, and we have, over time, again, getting to know the audience, seeing what ideas resonate most with people, gotten to a point where we can, with regularity, create an article that people are going to spend some time with. Now, what we see is, engagement, meaning someone spent meaningful amount of time with a story, is the thing that's most likely to get them to come back. If people spend more than a minute and scroll halfway through an article, they're like 3 times as likely to sign up for our email newsletter than someone who hasn't. People who have hit that benchmark and then seen another article in the same session are like 12 times more likely, right, to sign up for our email newsletter than people who haven't. And that's important, because people who've been to the site once, less than 1% of them become a qualified lead for this client. People who've been 3 times, 9% of those people become a qualified lead. 10% of people who've been 4 times, 11% of people who have been there 5 times. I mean, it's linear. It seems like a made up number, but it's really true. And so to us, what that substantiates is, you're not trying to, we use this metaphor of the idea store. You have your product store. Everybody knows, what you sell, what your products are. But we come in and work with our clients to try to say, okay, if you had a store next door, it's a metaphor, but if you had a store next door that was just your ideas, what would be on the shelves? What are the ideas that are on the shelves? What are the experience that you're creating? And it's not enough to make someone a customer of your idea store. You want to make them a repeat customer. You got to get them to come back, to get loyalty to those ideas. And then what we see is that, similar to what we've seen with this client, at a certain point, maybe it's their 3rd time, maybe it's their 4th time, maybe it's their 5th time, they're going to notice that there's like a hole, in the wall here, and a pass through, into another store where there's products. And they're going to be like, I wonder what's in there. I'm going to go check out that product store this time. And that's the behavior that we see over and over and over again. And so I think the thing that we would say is you have to engage people in order to get them to come back. But you have to get them to come back and become repeat customers of your ideas in order to have permission to sell to them.
So, what are the obstacles that you see, cultural or organizational obstacles? Because a lot of money, like you have also always advocated, half the money, and I
Mhm.
really like this in advertising also. They say half the
Yeah.
money goes waste. Which half is working, you never know. So in content where the idea is to engage, again,
Mhm.
there is a similar parallel. So what are the challenges? Because it is such a big uh, you know orientational change to think
Mhm.
consumer, what is value to them and not my product, because you're seeped in your product as a marketer. You're thinking, little incremental changes or improvements that you're making, and you want to focus all your communication there, rational aspects, etc., but people, like you said, their life and their context is larger and bigger, and
Yeah.
you become important only at some moments. So, because this is a challenge, even for community building, that same engagement that you have to do, you need to be of value to them, and not brand centric and individual consumer centric. So, what are the challenges that you face, and
Mhm.
how do you overcome them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I appreciate the way that you framed the question. And I would say, honestly, the challenges are largely cultural. And there are, as you become more mature or more ambitious in terms of your content and content creation and what you're using it for, those cultural challenges become more pronounced and more challenging. And so, you know, honestly, the first we think of it in terms of maturity. And the first step of maturity is, can you just make something that is, in this vein of, what people care about as opposed to about your product, and get it on the internet, get it out there into the world. And and it's and there is a cultural challenge associated with this, because you might be someone who is, as I'm talking about, you got to make people care, you got to find out what, tell relatable stories. You're sitting there going, yes, 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 right? But you have to convince other people who might not might not think the same thing you do, and who are asking questions like, well, how does that help us sell? What's the value in doing that? You have to convince them that you should be allowed to go out into the world and spend money to create this content, and then get it on the web somewhere. That's challenge one. It can be very easy, but we've also seen it being really hard, where there's a lot of internal resistance to these, to the content that doesn't have the product mentioned 17 times in the third paragraph, right? um, Once you have it out there, um, that's just the beginning. I think we like to say, you get results when you have a content program, not when you have a bunch of assets. It takes work to build an audience. A piece of content on the web is the proverbial tree that's falling in the woods. You need to do the work by promoting it on social, putting some money behind it, email, organic search, partnerships. I mean, there's all kinds of levers that you can pull, that are designed to get people, the people you're trying to reach. Specifically, my mom will read anything that I'm associated with, but she's not going to be the target customer for most of our clients. um, how do you get the people you're trying to reach to the content that you're making? um, and then, do you have the instrumentation to be able to see what's working and what's not working? Are you able to see, can you tell how much time people are spending with your content? As we try to live in this world where, did they click buy now, is not how we assess value. If we are trying to say, like, our goal is to create something that you're going to find valuable, we, Message Lab, is aligned on this notion that how much time you spend consuming what we put out there is you telling us with your behavior whether you found it valuable or not. If you spend 3 seconds, you probably didn't find it really valuable. If you spend 10 minutes, yeah, you found this valuable, right? Are people coming back? If you If people are spending time with your content, what content are they spending time with? What are the attributes of the pieces? Maybe everybody loves videos, no one's reading articles. Maybe people like content about topic A, regardless of the format, but don't spend any time with topic B. Or maybe one of your audiences is really into topic A, but a different audience is really into topic B. How do we, do we have the infrastructure in place that allows us to see that and then take action to, hey, let's stop writing about topic B. Let's do more stuff about topic A. Let's stop writing articles that no one cares about. Let's do more video. Let's test. Let's find some new things that we can try. It sounds kind of easy, to do that. But what we find is that it can be really hard because oftentimes what you're trying to do within an organization is get people who aren't used to orienting around a certain kind of work stream and saying like, hey, instead of measuring the traffic on our web this way, can we measure it this other way? And sometimes the answer is like, yeah, totally. That can be set up in 30 seconds and it can't, and sometimes it's, you're trying to get that person's attention over and over and over again because it's not someone who you have direct control over because of the way an organization is set up. There's other things as well where people are used to doing, there's a mode of a big marketing campaign where you spend 6 months, a year coming up with a strategy, developing the assets, and then you flood the market, with your advertisement or whatever it is for a set period of time, and those ads run, for something like that. What we do is much more improvisational. Think of it, if that's an orchestra, think about what we do as jazz, right? We're doing lots of little pieces of content. Each one is an experiment. We are trying to test and learn and be iterative. And it requires more improvisation and it requires more immediate action. It requires shifting things pretty quickly. And that can be hard to do. If you're designing an asset that is timely and newsy, you don't want to have your paid, promotion campaign behind that for more than 48 hours. 48 hours later, you want to promote something else that is at that point new and newsy. But we've worked with clients where sort of the institutional memory for promotion is like, great, here's this asset. We're going to promote it for a month. And then we're going to swap it out a month later. But if you're talking about news, if you got shown something about read this newsy article about a thing that happened a month ago, you're not going to click. Who cares, right? It doesn't meet the why does anybody care standard anymore. So, what we find is that getting an organization to move this way can be hard because it requires change.
And when also the fact that I think the whole science of it itself is evolving, like you said, is there any challenge in integrating it with the entire brand idea because it's moving fast? And I'm saying the brand campaign or the entire context of the brand campaign might not be that fresh by the time it comes out, but the content, online content, doesn't have that problem. So how is that a real challenge at all, and how is that tackled?
Yeah, I think what we try to do is we try to think about. It's actually a good question. We have a dawning understanding that what we're really doing when we're working with clients, we're creating an editorial sub brand, meaning you have your brand over here, but there is something that is subservient to it that is more editorial in nature. You want it to. This is a weird thing to say, but you want it to be a little off brand in order to be on brand, meaning, people are so used to seeing marketing that I think we know when we're being marketed to or advertised to. Mm-hmm. And when it's unwelcome, we just sort of ignore it. Think of the billboards on the side of the road or on the buses that drive by. Like, how often do you really find yourself, tuning in to billboards, right? Sometimes we're kind of bored and we're looking around, but a lot of times we're just kind of like, the bus goes by and we're not paying any attention. We say, oh, there's a bus, and so half of the work is stuff other than the article. Um, we want it to be clear to someone by sort of tapping into the things that they're familiar with, that this piece of content that we are asking you to spend your time with isn't an advertisement and it's not a piece of traditional marketing. And so maybe the colors are a little bit different. Maybe you take a secondary color and you promote it to the primary color. Maybe instead of a slick photography style, it's a slightly less polished one. Or it's illustration. I don't know, but there's all kinds of things that you can do that are derivative of the main brand, are consistent with it, because, again, it has to be from you and of you, and you have to feel good about it. But you want it to be a little bit different. So I think that's the first way that we sort of deal with the dynamic that you're describing, is sort of figure out what is the role of content, relative to the primary brand there. The second is, what is its function? Like, what is it trying to do? And if brand marketing is going to have, a sort of a consistent always on layer, a campaign layer that has bursts of activity around different ideas, what are the things that we can do within this editorial sub brand that both support that ambient always on layer, but then also pay off the various campaign moments? Can we come up with stories that happen in the world that are pegged to a campaign idea? And honestly, like the fastest and most obvious thing is to shift the focus from the product to the person. So, back to school in the fall is a big moment that a lot of people who make products are sort of geared up to. You need a new backpack, you need new clothes, you need a computer, you need everything to go back to school, right? And if you in the big brand is going to be talking about why you need our backpack for back to school, like that this is the season for your new backpack, right? But that's not, again, if you put your mindset of a student, and they're thinking about back to school, there's a lot of things that they think about in terms of that problem. It's so much bigger than a backpack. They're thinking about, meeting new friends. They're thinking about, what's like, how do I want to look? How do I want to present myself? What is the message that I want to send with my style? And how am I going to be, how are my peers going to think of me? That's what a kid going back to school is thinking about. And then yeah, the backpack is going to be part of that, right? And at a point in time, they're going to have thought about these bigger questions and then be like, I want a Transformers backpack, or I want a cool red, sleek, fold down hiking backpack or something like that, right? So for us, for that editorial sub brand, we'd take that moment of back to school and we would try to then think about, okay, well, what are all of what is the relatable problem here? What is the way a human thinks about this? And what can we do that's going to be helpful to that person in that moment by sharing somebody else's experience, by talking about what are the most popular backpacks? I mean, it's a little silly now as we get into this example, but
not at all.
But what are the most popular, what are the 10 most popular colors this back to school season? That kind of thing, and it's we're not trying to sell you the backpack by talking about the 10 most popular colors or what's in from a style. Is this a sleek year or is this a boxy year? And talking to a fashion expert, I mean, I don't know. Those are the kinds of things that that we might plug in with.
Ben, now I'm thinking there should be a journalist on every content management, content creation team,
Yeah, well, so there's probably a journalist available for every content team and content creation team.
Yeah, because that mindset is so precious to. Yeah. So, when we say that a brand is trying to have a conversation with the consumer or let's say the individual, and is trying to own a conversation as well, we stand for this. um, and which becomes an idea or a larger purpose at times. And the content, the engagement has such a crucial role to make it convincing, credible,
Yeah.
because you're giving value beyond just the product, which is going to give you profit. But you're trying to make my life better around that area. We have to be off brand to be on brand. I love that. It's such a nice catchphrase to for the complementary role that content management is content creation and management is doing for a brand. When you say that, the whole thinking is, what is the mindset of this individual in his current life, in his current life stage, in his current constraints and circumstances, when he's thinking of this category, for example. Then, do you, apart from online analytics, uh, would you is there a way to use offline research, like an ethnography or in-depth interviews, because journalists do that all the
Yeah, I
time,
know. I was
right?
going to tell you. I was going to tell you. Like, the thing that honestly, the thing that we do is we talk to people, and we'll go out and we'll say, what are you interested in? And I will say, I like data. I think data is really valuable. Personally, speaking for myself, I feel like I have learned more in or it's complimentary, obviously, but like talking to someone for an hour, just an hour about the problems as they lived them, or what are the specific circumstances, and really kind of digging deeper, to me is so much more revealing, in terms of, okay, I think I understand, than, this person cares about topic A, topic B, and topic C, but understanding why and having the opportunity to really dig deep and explore it, to me, is hugely valuable.
Yeah, I am so happy to hear this, because whenever I take up a project, and recently I'm doing something for nutraceuticals, and there's an entire research, they're saying we'll give you 3 4 researches, you can access it. I said, yeah, along with that, I'm trying to convince them, please, can you give me some people who've adopted this product in the last 6 months to 1 year? I like to wear their shoes. I like to see what hat they're
Mm,
wearing. And they're like, no, this is a whole research. There's a lot of data. But
yeah.
that whole thing of, I get this person, I get their life in its entirety is so meaningful. Like you just start thinking intuitively, about the person and what
Yeah,
connects
and
with
in
them.
fact, we've started to do what we call reader profiles, which everybody has seen the persona decks, that sort of are handed out as part of corporate research. But I think what we find is that they're too focused on someone as a customer, and they're too
Mm.
focused on, how they evaluate a product and how they try to integrate a product into their lives. And what they don't really focus on is, um, what someone cares about, and so so we try to, do our own version of a persona, which is like a reader persona, which is like, what do they care about? What motivates them? And it's less about, do they go to the gym every day at 6 a.m., because those things aren't really universal. But, what are the topics? What are their biggest concerns? And then, can we update that over time based on real behavior?
Yeah, and like you said, the why, we should never
Yeah.
get, in its depth from just
Mhm.
like a standardized research. Okay. Do you want to do some crystal ball gazing for us, Ben? What are some
Uh,
emerging trends which do you think could be a game changer? You're going to bet your money on if you had to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I think we see is that there's so much content in the world right now, and the reality is the world doesn't need any more content. People don't need any more content, and so I think we see a um, while there are still benefits to volume, I think we're seeing more importance placed on the experience. And can you create a experience that is going to demand somebody's attention and get them to essentially be a signal that can break through the noise? And so, I think in our narrow world, aside from all of the stuff about using analytics and instrumentation to be able to understand and improve your performance, we are going to see much more of a premium placed on the kind of experiences that you can create.
Want? There is going to be a rapid fire. You have to be rapid. And
Okay.
if you take time to think, or if you elaborate on the questions, I'm going to shoot you. Let's see how you do. You ready? Mother's best advice.
I love my mom dearly, and I can't think of any of the advice that she's giving me. Communicate well. Communicate well.
Oh, nice. Okay. Alternate profession could have been?
Film, movie making. I loved movies and just never went there.
Oh, okay. It's not too late. Okay. What would you do on Mars for fun?
Try to get off of Mars.
Okay. As per your wife, your most often used phrase.
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?
Very wise. Okay. One thing no one knows about you.
Well, I was going to say that I can gargle and sing at the same time, but I think
Now everybody knows already.
what so many people don't know. I don't know. I tend to be an open book. So I don't know. It's that one. I think I already busted out my best secret.
Okay. A book you'd like to gift to all your friends.
The Power Broker by Robert Caro.
Okay. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Don't be scared about trying new things. That failure is just an opportunity to learn, and that it's fine. Fail over and over and over again. Just do so in a way where you're taking away the right lessons.
Okay. What's something new happening in your life right now?
I mean, this is our family was in a fire over the weekend, and we lost a lot of our belongings, and just trying to figure out how do you deal with the fact that you just lost all your stuff in a fire is very new and unfamiliar and a little frustrating.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. Okay, what's your greatest joy?
Spending time outdoors with my family.
How would you like strangers to remember you?
Always try to do the right thing.
What's a lesson that took you a long time to learn?
The one that I would tell my 18-year-old self. So I don't know how I discovered that I could do this, but my kids always get a kick out of it. So I guess I'll do it live or here for your audience, which is that gargling and singing at the same time, which is a strange combination. But I will.
Very interesting.
Yes, exactly. I'll do my best here. That was intended to be the first bit of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Ben, could you share your online addresses, emails, any details that audiences could reach out to you? Yeah.
The company is Message Lab. You can find us at messagelab.com, or you can just search Message Lab. I'm Ben Worthen, and if you type my name into Google, I'll probably be the first things that come up, but you can also find me on LinkedIn if you just type Ben. Please, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe and follow.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. It's been so nice. I really appreciate when science, technology, and online new emerging stuff is talked about in such a human manner, and practitioners with deep expertise do that. They simplify things and explain the role of it, and that's so needed. So people, more and more people, even with a conventional mindset, can adopt it easily. So
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's great to be here, and I appreciate the conversation.